Good morning, good afternoon, perhaps even good night to some of you. Um, Chris here from Yamaha Canada, your friendly product specialist from up north, today for another live stream. We already have some people joining in the comments. I've got Lim saying good afternoon from Virginia, so good afternoon to you, Lim. We'll get started very shortly. Let's just wait for a few other people to show up. We got Dean from the Facebook comments saying hi. Hey Dean, hope you're doing well. We got Ricardo as well. Hello Ricardo, hope you're well. And yeah, so we'll slowly get started because we've just started that stream now, so more people will likely join in. Um, Today's live stream will be mostly about Powercab, but it's going to go over a concept that um, can be used on other products such as Helix or Podgo, HX Stomp, whatever product that we have that uses cab blocks, right? Because it's going to pertain it's going to be about speakers mostly. Um, We'll go over some tones, discuss the different types of speakers that I'm going to be using today. Um, and why Power Cab? Because in the past, was a traditional guitar cabinet user. And from time to time, I really enjoyed swapping speakers in my cab, which is probably something that a lot of us have done in the past. Um, and Power Cab, since it focuses on the speaker emulations rather than just a mic'd cab, like the cab blocks on Helix, for example, is more in line with that, I guess, just swapping speakers in a regular cabinet. So we'll go over some classic configurations, some of my favorites. I made some presets on HX Stump because I'm using the HX Stump today as my amp, but it's literally just an amp block with my preferred settings and just a little bit of reverb. That's it. So we'll really be focusing on the cabs today. We got another comment from YouTube here from Blue saying hi from UK. It's probably later in the evening in the UK, but thanks for joining in. So let me just switch to PowerCab Edit here, and we'll get underway. Okay, so the first amp that I got lined up for today is the very recently released 2203 that probably most of you have used since it was released. Very good amp, very good sounding amp, very classic sounding, typical 80s British stuff, right? Um, Throughout the video today, I'll be, of course, like I was saying, comparing speakers, but I'll stay on the same preset. So my low, high cuts, levels, and mic choices will be the same throughout. So we'll really be focusing on what the speaker itself brings to the fold. So yeah, I got the 2203 amp model here with a very classic pairing for it with the green speaker. And here goes. So typical from that amp, very bright. It was pretty much in the early era of having higher gain amps. So not exactly super high gain, but still more than what we were used to hearing in the 70s. But yeah, so classic pairing with the green speaker, not too bright of a speaker, good mids and good bottom end. And we'll go and compare with another kind of classic pairing for that amp, which will be the Herald. My What I hear as the main differences between the two is that the green speaker kind of is a bit more modern sounding in the sense that it has more bottom end and it's a bit smoother in the highs. Um, I feel like it's kind of better for cleans um, and leads because of the smoother high-end. Whereas the Herald is great with that amp specifically because it's got really high-end content. So it's really bright and punchy and really reminiscent of those 80s classic rock tones. We got some comments here. Got Blues saying that they're using their 60 watt catalyst for their modeling of FX unit. Yes, if you use the return jack in the back and switch it to power amp in, it makes for a really good powered speaker for modelers. Just remember to turn the cab sim off on your modeler because the speaker in the catalyst isn't a full range speaker like in Powercab, so you don't need that extra cab sim block on there. And we've got Ricardo asking if we are hearing direct line from power. Yes, it is correct. You're hearing the line out from the Powercab itself. Like I was saying, my HX Stump just has an amp block in it, so there's no cab block on there. So yeah, you're hearing the Powercab indeed. So let's just go through a quick rhythm comparison between the green speaker model and the Herald. Like I was saying, it's going to be a bit smoother with the green and a bit trebly with the Herald. I'm going to play the same riff so you can hear the differences. So kind of bright, bit of bass, smoother sounding. Let's just switch here to the Herald. Like I was saying, play same riff again. Sorry for the little flub there. Yeah, so way brighter sounding, really reminiscent of the hair metal bands from the 80s. Really good sounding speaker if you tend to leads on the lower side of the neck. So if you play on when compared to the green, that I'm going to switch back to. So a bit smoother sounding. If you play notes that are too low, it's going to not get lost because of the bass, but you don't get that focus that the Herald brings. So yeah, two really classic 70s, 80s kind of speakers that pair very well with those higher gain British, really bright and punchy sounding amps. Like I was saying, I kept the same low and high cut values, so the comparison is really more between the speakers themselves than just different presets. I wanted this experiment today to be as transparent as possible, if that makes any sense. So I kept everything the same but the speaker. Yeah, so good, very good and classic speaker pairings for those types of amps. So if you use the Brit models that are in any HX Stomp XL or Helix, those are two very classic pairings that you will feel very familiar with if that's the sound you're going for. Going to switch to another amp here. I'll stay on the same speaker model so we can really hear the differences between the two amps and how different types of speaker are really more suited to different types of amps. Because as much as I love the green here, I'm going to be switching to an American clean-ish kind of amp, and in my personal opinion, it's maybe not best suited for those speakers because they're a bit more scooped in the mids. And yeah, I'll just switch here and we'll compare those. So I'm switching to the Tweed amp. So I'll just play on the 2203 again, just so we can just get a little glimpse. Switch to the Tweed. See, it's got a bit too much mids, in my personal opinion, once again, for that amp, it becomes a bit chewy and kind of muddy in a way. So I'll be switching to another speaker model that is a bit more suited for that type of amp. We got another comment here from Dean, just asking if I can demonstrate the 57 mic. Okay, yeah, so you got the PC112, the regular Powercab, and that's your only mic option. No problem. So you'll even hear the differences between the 160 and the 57 at the same time. Let me just switch to that speaker model that I intended to use with the amp I'm currently on, and then I'll switch the mic model. So yeah, we were on the green, but on the Tweed amp, a bit too chewy to my taste, too much mids. Let's switch to the Jarvis here, which is really more modern sounding, way more scooped as well. So a really good speaker model for cleans, especially if you're on the neck pickup. It'll be really clean because of the mids that were taken away. So just a quick demonstration of that, and then I'll switch to the 57 mic option like Dean was asking. So I'll just go to the green so we have a comparison point. Then Jarvis here. See how there's way less mids, and like I was saying, great option if you want to do cleans. And yeah, I'll switch to that 57 mic model right now. So once again, that's a 160 ribbon. Then let's switch to that 57. It will be way brighter. So now you can really hear the 57 adding so much treble. Main difference is because the 57's way more directional than the 160, which tends to capture a broader part of the speaker itself. My trick with the 57 is to go with an even more aggressive high cut, right? To really tame some of those highs, especially if we don't touch the amp settings. But yeah, so I'm at 6.6 kilohertz at the moment. Let's go maybe to 5.7. It's really aggressive right now with the 57. So. So that's a good trick that I like to use, really playing with that high cut, especially if you have the 57 set as your mic. Really helps to deal with the super trebly nature of the 57. So yeah, I would definitely recommend playing with those high cut values here, just to tame some of those really trebly highs from the 57. So I hope that it answers your question, Dean. And if you got any other questions, just feel free to ask throughout this live stream today. I'll be happy to do my best, at least, to answer your questions. So just for the sake of the live stream today, I'm just going to be switching back to the 160 because my presets were kind of made around that choice, especially that I didn't change the EQs on them. And I felt like it was kind of a transparent or more transparent sounding mic, if that makes any sense. Not that any mics are really transparent, but it resembled what I remembered hearing from the real thing. So yeah, we're on the Jarvis speaker model. Like I was saying, super scooped, great for cleans. Not that my preset is exactly clean, but you still get an idea, right? So there are two other speaker choices that are kind of classic with those American cleaner amps. So we had the Jarvis here. The Jetson is another one of those. Like the Herald, the Jetson is available on the Powercab 112 Plus and the 212 Plus. So it's not a speaker option that is found in the regular 112 model. This one is going to have way more mids, so in my mind, better suited for a bit more distortion, less clean stuff, and maybe blues and those types of riffs, right? So let's just go back to the Jarvis here so we can have a little snippet of what we were playing with. So yeah, way more mids, not as trebly as the Jarvis, and a bit more bass as well. So really suited for those fatter licks, with especially with distortion. Good for leads, creamy kind of leads. So. So in a similar way to the green amp speaker model, the mids kind of make the amp sound not muddy, but a bit more exaggerated in the distortion, because of the boost, the EQ boost of that the speaker model provides. So yeah, it makes for a dirtier sound. So not always best suited for cleans, right? Because if I just turn the volume pot down and keep the same speaker model, so yeah, if you want to play with overdrives and stuff like that, the Jetson will give you that extra push. And then if you want to go for really cleaner kind of stuff, almost jazzy cleans because of the scooped mids nature of the Jarvis, you might as well try this one. Another good speaker pairing for those American kind of clean-ish kind of amps that I found is the Payeur here. Bit different than the Jetson, still has quite a bit of mids. I feel like the Jetson's a bit more trebly. Let's just hear the Payeur. So it's got less bass, pretty much an equivalent amount of mids, but yeah, a bit thinner sounding. So once again, very well suited for leads and stuff like that. Maybe not the best for for cleans, because if I go in the neck pickup again and roll the volume pot down. Sounds almost muffled, right? And it's a great segue because Ricardo here was posting a comment saying that it would be great to get some tips on how to EQ speaker sims so they don't sound muffled in the room. The I sounds great with the mics and low and high cuts, but in the room they sound like the amp have a blanket. Sorry about that. A good way to have a good in the room sound, because those controls still work on the actual cabinet, right? The low and high cuts, they still work on the Powercab's speaker, so it doesn't just work for the line out. So if you don't use the direct out of the Powercab and just use the cab itself as a monitor or just an amp on a stage, I would recommend maybe going for a brighter kind of mic, like a 57 for example, and really playing with those high cut settings. The natural brightness from the 57 will help you cut through a mix and will remove that aspect of having a blanket in front of the amp, and the high cut will help you dial it in where it's not too bright and brittle, right? So yeah, this could be a good trick. If you're using a Helix or any HX product really that has more than one signal path, or if you can put a split on, you can route your outputs. For example, you could have something from your HX stump that would go direct or to another amp, and what's going to the Powercab, you could put an EQ block just before, so you can EQ just that output. That could help as well. But yeah, just going for a brighter kind of mic and playing with the high cut setting really helped when I was first dialing in the Powercab for a room sound. So yeah, hope that helps. You may want to play with the low cut as well, because they're fairly bassy sounding amps. Powered speakers, sorry. See, my low cut setting is at 125, which is a bit higher than what I would usually put on just for example, my cap block on my HX stump. So yeah, you might want to play with that as well, because it's a thing. It's one thing where you have too little or too many highs, but if you have too much bass, that'll play against you as well. So yeah, just try these things, but yeah, go for a brighter mic. If you just want to play, mess with the Powercab itself, go for a brighter mic, play with the high cut settings and the low cut settings. You should have a pretty good sound that cuts through. So yeah, well, let's just keep going on here. So yeah, we had the Bayou here, lots of mids, a bit thinner, so really good for leads. So a bit fizzy sounding in the highs, so really great for that. I wouldn't necessarily use it for rhythm, but if you gotta just if you want to have a sound that make it seem like your amp is cooking, that's a good speaker model to have. Let's switch something a bit more modern. Then switch amp models here. Went from a American Tweed to a Rectifier. So it'll be much more bassier sounding amp, tons more gain, a bit tighter as well because it's a more modern amp. Let's keep that Bayou speaker model to see what it does to it. Might actually work because the Rectifier is kind of a scooped amp, really bassy, so the thinner and more mid-forward nature of the Bayou might be a good pairing. So now it's almost like it doesn't have enough treble because those amps are so bassy. So it's a good reason why the vintage and the shade speaker models are great pairings with that amp. They have a lot of clarity and treble content. So let's just play a little riff here with the vintage speaker model. So really bright and aggressive. Uh, it's got okay levels of bass. Keep in mind that the amp itself, the rectifier, is really bassy. I did cut the bass on the amp CQ, so we don't have too much bass going on. So it's not the only thing that we can hear. But yeah, it's a great speaker pairing because it brings so much top end that it really makes for the added bass that the amp has. We got another question here from AZDH. If you use the Powercab, do you stop using the cabs within the HX Stomp or Pod Go? Yes. So, well, it depends really. In the case of my live stream today, yes, because I'm using the actual speaker models from Powercab, like you can see here. You know, I'm in the speaker category here, but if you want to keep using your cab blocks on your Podgo, HX Stomp, stuff like that, you can actually run the Powercab in flat mode, which is basically just a full range powered speaker. And then you can decide on your voicing, but if you put it on FRFR, you got the full frequency spectrum from the speaker and the horn as well. So it is exactly like, well, not exactly, but it is like plugging into a PA system, for example. So since I don't have a cab block activated on my HXM preset, it'll sound very harsh. So excuse me for that. See, that's way too bright. It doesn't have any bass to it. So that's why today I'm on the speaker modeling section of Powercab, because it makes it sound like a real amp if I don't have a cap lock engaged. My pleasure. Yeah, if you're using any kind of modelers with that. Like I was saying, that's one of the bigger differences between Powercab and using your Catalyst, for example, as a powered speaker. The Powercab can be a full range flat response speaker, whereas the Catalyst, if you plug in the return in the back, it is still just a normal guitar speaker with a normal frequency range. So that's the main difference. Yeah, so we're on the vintage speaker model here. Like I was saying, plenty of highs to compensate for the incredible amount of bass that the amp has. And I'll switch to another speaker that was very commonly used with those amps, which is a shade speaker model here, which I tend to like better than the vintage for that specific amp model, better suited for rhythm as well. So it's got a bit more mids than the vintage. Still got plenty of high to make the amp not sound really muffled. And it's just a great pairing. Doesn't exaggerate the bass response as well, so still lets you cut through a mix even though it's a bassy amp. So yeah, that's just a great speaker model. Like the Jetson and the Herald, the Shade speaker model is currently available for Powercab 112 Plus and 212 Plus. So maybe keep that in mind. But yeah, the vintage, you can't really go wrong either. Another speaker model that I really like for those is the Lecto here. It's a super high headroom speaker, so it's kind of got a more even frequency response. It's not exaggerating the bass, the mids, or the treble. So I feel like this one, even though it's got maybe less personality, if it makes sense, is a bit more even on the frequency spectrum. So it really it doesn't fight with the amp itself. It lets the amp be whatever it is. So it's a cleaner kind of, once again, I'm not a fan of the term, but it's a more transparent sounding speaker. Really useful for either super clean stuff or super highly distorted stuff. Because the crunch, you want to have a brighter kind of sound, like with the 2203 preset I had earlier on. But for the super clean or the super high gain, that speaker model is really killer because it's got an even frequency spread. So you get everything. You don't have to fight too much with the bass or the treble. Just a really awesome speaker model. So yeah, so just it's just a quick, half-hour stream of tons of concepts that you can apply to different amps and speaker combinations. Those were just some of my favorites. Um, One, like I was saying, you could do pretty much the same if you have a Podgo or a Helix, and if you use the cap blocks. It's just that since we kept the same settings for today, it really puts the emphasis on the speaker models on Powercab rather than having a mic'd cab kind of sound. This one really focuses on the speakers, and we got to see why certain speaker models are better suited for different types of amps, and why does it make sense to use different speakers with different amps. That's why you often see people either swapping speakers in their cabs or just using different amps with a cab from another brand, because at the end of the day, gear and instruments, it's always a matter of finding the right recipe, right? It's almost like cooking. If you put some ingredients with some other ones, it might not always work the best, but when you get the right pairings and the right flavors together, it makes for a really great time. So thanks to everyone that joined in on the stream today. I hope that at least maybe one of you learned something. At least one of you learned something. My job here is done. And hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Take care.